Welcome to another episode of an intimate conversation with women of color. I am your host, Deneen L. Garrett, and today's guest is Tasha Randle. She equips professionals with clarity, confidence, and the action plan to boldly pursue and get the things they want in their career. Tasha, tell us more about you.
Hey, thanks for having me. I am excited to be here today. Like you talked about, I help women of color get the things that they want out of their career. Specifically, what I help them do is make strategic and intentional choices that help lead them on the pathway to landing their dream careers. And, I work with a range of women. Some women come in knowing exactly what they want. Others come in like, oh, I have maybe an inkling, not quite sure. And then there's some where it's like, hey, I want to continue my current career, but I have a desire to start like a side hustle and want to figure out how to do the balance and, ultimately transition that into potentially a full-time career later. And I really dive deep on helping them figure out, well, what are their purpose, their values, their talents, and their passions, and how to make sure that that is in alignment with the strategic choices that they are making so that they can be fulfilled. Because what I often find is that a lot of people, not just women of color, um, end up in careers that are kind of just like by happenstance almost. It's like, hey, I kind of just knew I needed to check the box. I'm going to go to school, get a good job, and, be able to pay my bills. But I wasn't strategic and intentional about choosing what my career was to align with what was going to be most fulfilling for me. And so then what that looks like is on the back end, they get in these careers. They're excited in the beginning because it's a, cool, shiny new job. And then a couple of years in, they're looking like, okay, this is not really what I want. I'm not happy and I don't know why. I can't quite put my finger on it. I know I want more. I feel like I should be grateful for what I have, but at the same time, I'm wanting and seeking more. And so I help them get that clarity and, strategies and confidence in order to pursue that. I often find too that a lot of women, especially women of color, find that their voices aren't heard in corporate spaces and that they're, often, the at the on the other end of being gaslit, on the other end of microaggressions, et cetera, that further amplify imposter syndrome for them and kind of starts to stifle them and make them feel like they can't really get their heart's desires. And so I work with women on that as well.
Yeah, and so you actually touched on really what this whole conversation about, right, is our voices. And
Mhm.
as women of color, as Black women, it's important for us to have a platform to use our voice. So other than a lot of what you've already shared as far as helping women to really understand and get in touch with what their heart's desire is, why is it important for us, women of color, Black women, to have a platform to use our voices?
Yeah, so we all deserve to be heard. Everyone deserves to be heard, but I feel like the people who are least heard is the Black woman.
Yeah.
And so that's why it is so, so important. And I mean, Black women are the backbone of our society, in my opinion. And so if anybody should be heard, it should be the Black woman.
Right.
But there are so many things that often hold us back, either emotionally, stifles us, or just automatically just shuts us. Like we don't even get an opportunity, even if we were emotionally ready to talk and felt confident enough to say what we wanted to say. Sometimes you're not even given the opportunity, and
Yeah.
so that's why it's important to like have the know-how and the right strategies and tactics to know how to successfully get your voice heard. And then there's, like I said, on the other side, there's an emotional aspect of some women just have been beat down so much emotionally when they've tried to speak up that now they kind of fall back, and for fear of what people are going to say, what type of response that they're going to get. And so helping women work through imposter syndrome is also a big part of heavy lifting that I do as well, and that comes with helping them clearly see the value that they bring to the table and knowing how to package that in such a way that they feel confident when they go present that to others, whether it's their teams that they work with or the companies that they're negotiating with, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what is, and sometimes it's a very delicate balance because I'm thinking of a situation whereas, we can kind of control how we react to things and what we do when things happen. And so it was a situation where, the person not totally out of pocket, and not out of pocket how, you all may just think, but, it required a lot of coaching, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that can be exhausting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you have a choice as to what to do with that, because you only have so much control over another person, and you really don't have control over another person. So it goes back to you and what you do. But that delicate balance is when you become silent about certain things. Are you giving up your voice? Or,
Yes.
you really have to think about it like, okay, I'm pulling back, but why am I pulling back? Or is there value to pull back? Because again, it's delicate. Sometimes it is.
Yes.
Sometimes it is better for you to just pull back, and keep it moving in that direction that you're going in, and maybe even help that person along. But then it's sometimes that is actually part of their strategy, whether they're aware of it or not, that they intended for that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Deneen, you have said a word. You have said a word, because so what you talked about on, people holding back, and it's a question of like, are you giving up your voice?
Yeah.
That resonates so much with me, because this is one of the things that was on the beginning of my journey. When one of the reasons I do this work, just transparently and real talk, as my
Real
company
talk.
is called Real Talk Tasha, is I was on the other end of this. Like, I was the woman that I am helping today. I was her. And so I found strategies that helped me get out of that, and I want to pass that on. But to the point of losing your voice or giving it up, I was at that point in my career where I had this, big cushy job that I had as a dream job. I got in it, and over time, through the microaggressions, through, the gaslighting, it made me start to doubt, and the imposter syndrome, it made me start to doubt myself and the value that I brought. And I, quite frankly, at the time, I was going to some counseling and was having discussions about how I was feeling. And through it, I realized, because at first I started off the conversation on like, I feel that this company has stolen my voice and has muffled me. And through it, I actually came to the realization is, once I got really honest with myself, is I gave up my voice. Because I let the microaggressions, the imposter syndrome get in my head so much that I just stopped speaking up. So to your point on, are you really letting your voice go? A lot of women do that. So that's what I talked about earlier on. Sometimes it's an emotional aspect that's holding people back, that it's an internal thing that you have to hit the switch on. But there are definitely also external factors that need to be addressed. And so I work with women on how to find that delicate balance. And then I also work with corporations to help them figure out how to create inclusive leaders. So I do DEI work as well with companies, because once the, Black women of color come in equipped with the strategies and the confidence to go after what they want, we also need to make sure that there aren't barriers holding them back on the other end.
Right.
And so it's a two-way street. But like you talked about, it's very much a delicate balance of when to speak up. No, and it's best to know that it's not you giving up your voice, but you're making an intentional choice. If you choose not to say anything or choose not to speak, you're making an intentional and willful choice, and don't regret it. Because sometimes, to be honest, you make choices and you say, I don't want to speak because I need to protect my peace. Like, I don't even want to expend my energy on that today. And that's perfectly fine.
Yes.
But it needs to be your intentional and strategic choice that you can be content with, and not feel like, man, I feel like I should have said something, or I feel like I just got muffled or wanted to say something and didn't know how.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's exactly what I'm talking about, with that delicate balance where you're intentional about it. You made the choice, and that's what's key. Yes. So, you're talking a lot about this already, and, it's obvious that you're passionate about helping women of color elevate their careers to ones that are meaningful, and where they're confident in what they bring to the table, so that they can be heard and paid well, which is what you've already said. So tell us how you accomplished this, and more about Real Talk, Tasha.
Yes. So I do one-on-one and group coaching. And like I said, I work with individuals directly, and then also with corporations. And when I'm working with groups of women or individuals in the one-on-one coaching, what I do is I help them through a fulfillment model. And so in that fulfillment model, what it is it's if you think about like a Venn diagram, but it's multiple circles. And those different circles that are overlapping are your purpose, your passions, your talents, and your values. When you look at those, all of them overlap in some way. Where you can find at the center where those all overlap at the same time is where you're going to have your highest level of fulfillment. So if you can find a career that taps into your passions, taps into your talents, taps into your purpose, taps into your values, you're going to be most fulfilled. You don't have to necessarily be right at that center, because there's also levels of fulfillment that you can get where at least two of those things overlap. So I highly encourage that you actually have at least two of those somewhere overlapping to have the most fulfillment in your career. And so I work with women on identifying those. And once we identify those, we also then put together the individual's personal brand.
Mm-hmm.
And the personal brand helps them more clearly show up in corporations representing that, and also be able to, what's most important is to be able to clearly articulate that personal brand and the specific values and talents that they bring to the company, in order to make sure that they are seen as an expert for what they bring to the table, and also are paid as the experts that they are. Because oftentimes we don't get what we don't ask for, and we don't get what we haven't actually, transparently, we have to sell ourselves.
Yeah.
It's not my most fun part, but real talk, you have to sell yourself. You have to show people the value that you bring. You do that in the way that is most authentic to you, but you have to get people on the same page with, like, hey, here's the value that Tasha brings to the table, and you need to make sure that they are clear on that. That's selling.
Yeah.
And so helping women be able to package that in a way that they then know how to go sell that, to make sure that they are getting heard and paid for what they're worth.
Yeah. Now, do you find that maybe the greatest area of opportunity, or one of the greatest, is articulating your value?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Right.
And oftentimes it's because, and I find so many times, because of imposter syndrome and how society has beat Black women down again and again, or women of color in general, we underestimate our talents. Is one of the biggest spots that I find, like when I'm working with women, that it's like, oh, honey, you selling yourself short. And like we take for granted the things that come easy to us. We're like, oh, is that really something that's like value? And it's like,
Right.
yes, yeah. You just, what may become easy for you, it does not come easy for everybody, and everybody can't do it like you can do it.
Right.
Let's figure out how to position this in a way that you can make sure that it is presented as a value add to the company or the customers that you're trying to serve.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you hit it on, right? This is a conversation I've had. I've had a different version of this conversation the last several weeks. And for me, it's like, so something that I say about myself is I serve pie, passion, innovation, and execution. So I'm doing it, right? I'm doing it, right? I'm getting it done. And it comes naturally. I don't think about it. I'm moving through it. Whereas other people are seeing it and are like, oh, wow, this and the other, you should this, you should that. And I'm like, I'm not doing anything any differently than anybody else. And they're like, ma'am, yeah, you are. But I'm in it and I do it. So that articulating the part, honey, that is a struggle. So yes. Thank you.
And sometimes you need, yes. And sometimes you need somebody externally to come in. Because like you said, when you're in it, it's hard to see all the value that you're bringing. And then when you have somebody look objectively from an external angle, you're like, oh, well, I guess you got a point, when like people help you craft it and put it together in such a way that you're like, oh, dang, okay, I am bringing more value than what I thought. And it helps you. And one of the big things I find too is, like, even women who know a little bit about their values and what they bring and kind of can articulate it, they struggle with the execution. And so, like, they get so lost. They have an idea of what they want, but they get lost in the bigness of it. They get stuck and stagnant, and they decide just to do nothing at all. And so they've been sitting on these dreams forever and just haven't made a move, because they're like, I'm a little bit overwhelmed, so I'm just going to keep going on with my everyday status quo. But then you're still not fulfilled. Right.
Absolutely. And so that leads me to, there are women of color who don't recognize the power of their voices. And so for me, your voice to me is any expression of yourself. So it could be speaking, right? Articulating. It could be creatively dancing and drawing and all of those type of ways that however you use your voice. So, in your work, what are you telling them? How are you telling, like, what are some of the key things you're telling them in Real Talk, Tasha, to help them to recognize the power of their voices?
Yeah. So in short, what I'd say is it is very unique to the individual because everybody's thing that holds them back is different.
Yes. Oh, yes.
But more broadly, what I'd say is one, helping them identify like, well, what is their unique individual struggle that is holding them back from boldly going out there and sharing their voice in whatever aspect that is. So then we can put together, strategies that uniquely fit, that help them overcome their unique challenges. But some of those things could be like something, where it's like affirmations that are specific to them, because sometimes you just need to hear it over and over again to have the confidence to go out there and get it. And then there's other ones where it's like, we need a strategic action plan. Here's the step by step that's going to get you to what you want. So there might be some people who, for instance, like you talked about, like it's not just your verbal voice. It could be acting. It could be an idea that you have to start a company. So I talked about sometimes people are like, hey, I have this kind of side hustle that I want to do, but don't know how to get that voice out there to the world and get it shared. And so I help them figure out like, okay, well, how do we take this big hairy goal and break it down into step-by-step action plan that helps you then bring this voice to fruition to where the whole world can get the value and the talents that you bring. So one of the things that got me into this is the parable of the talents in the Bible. And so for those not familiar, the parable of the talents talks about how God gave 3 men 3 different bags of, silver. We gave one man a bag, 10 bags, another man 5, and another one 1. The man with the 10 and the 5 bags in short, both of them went back and multiplied and came back and had more than what he gave them. And he was like, well done, my good and faithful servant. The one with the 1 bag was so afraid of losing that 1 bag of silver that he buried it. And when he came back, he gave him the 1 bag. And Jesus was like, well, what did you do with the gifts that I have given you? And he was so afraid of losing that he did nothing at all. And basically God was disappointed. And that honestly is one of the things that hit me to my core on starting Real Talk Tasha, because God spoke to me when I was going through a lot of self-discovery work to help myself attain fulfillment in my career. And he had told me 10 years ago to start a coaching business. And I had sat on it. I was like, who am I to do this? Like, I'm not, like, I don't, like, no. How am I going to coach somebody else? And I sat on it and I doubted all the gifts that he had given me. I overlooked them. People would come to me and tell me like, oh no, you're really great at this. So you're really great at strategies and uncovering things and putting all the pieces together and breaking things down and teaching it in such a simple way. And I'm like, I don't think I'm that great. And it's like, oh, okay. I didn't realize like, okay, everybody can't do it like I do it.
Yeah.
And it took God to bring reference to that parable of the talents that one day that I was reading it, to where it hit me in my soul, like he slapped me across the face. And I was like, dang, God, you're saying that I'm the one who's burying my gift right now. I'm the man with the 1 bag of silver that I'm burying it versus doing something with it. And I said, I do not want to end my life, come to the end of my life where I'm going to the gates to talk to you and I'm having to tell you like, oh yeah, I didn't do anything with the gifts that you have given me.
Right.
Like, so I was like, okay, I hear you. Let me get my stuff together and let me start moving on the gifts that you've put in me and the vision that you have given me.
Listen, I'm over here almost teary-eyed and all of that, because I was having a similar conversation this weekend, and I was saying to a friend of mine who, she wants to do this, she wants to do that, and she's not. Right. And different reasons or whatnot. And I said to her, and so because of the type of person that she is, she's more caring about not coming through for others versus herself. So I said to her, I said, well, guess what? When you don't, you're hindering somebody else.
Girl,
okay.
That was one of my posts on social is purpose unlocks purpose. Just as iron sharpens iron, purpose unlocks purpose. There are people out here sitting on their purpose and their calling and their gifts, and they are holding people back because God gave it to you for a reason, because he needs somebody else to get what he gave you. And so if
Word.
you're not doing what he has called you to do, you're holding somebody back.
Okay, and she's gonna love this when I bring in the parable of the talents.
Yes.
She's gonna love that. That's really gonna convict her. That's gonna get her down all up in her spirit.
I mean, God snatched my edges when I was
Oh,
like,
my
dang
goodness.
God, why
Right?
you have to convict? You put that conviction in my soul, and I was like, oh, okay,
Ooh.
let me get my act together.
Ooh, girl, ma'am, listen. Okay, so you talked earlier about what got you to where you are, right? Being transparent and saying because of what you went through. So here's the thing, because I hear this, I have these conversations with women often, and we all go through something. That something we went through got us to where we are today.
Mm-hmm.
So if we didn't go through that thing, would we be where we are today? I just want to get your thoughts on that.
I am a firm believer that everything is God orchestrated. We go through everything for a reason, and we may not know it in the season that we're in what the purpose of it is, but it will have a purpose. And at one point in time, you're going to look back and be like, that's why I went through it. So when I was going through my struggles with my career of being unfulfilled and having an inkling of what I wanted to do, but having no idea of how to get there, and having those moments of feeling like my voice had been muffled and I, wasn't heard or valued in the way that I wanted to. When I look back at that scenario, I know that God took me through that.
Yeah.
So I could help other women, because as I started working on myself and getting to the other side and feeling more comfortable having conversations with people about what I was struggling with and how I was feeling, I started to realize, oh, there are so many more women out here who feel the same way. And I thought it was like it's only me type of scenario. Let me just be grateful for what I have, because I have more than most. And I just need to stop like being all sorry about stuff. And then as I realized, I'm like, I am not the only one. And there are so many people out here living unfulfilled lives. And I'm a firm believer too, that God didn't call us for a life of mediocrity.
Nope.
He definitely did not. He called us to lives of abundance, because we are the children of his kingdom. And so that was the part that made me realize, like, okay, I need to step into my purpose.
Yeah.
So I can help other people get to where, God wants them to ultimately be, and help them unlock their purpose, because it's going to be a cyclical chain. The more women that I help, the more women and people that they're going to help.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then again, it goes back to the conversation I was having with my friend. So this word is for her. If nobody else, this episode is truly for her. And the other thing too, you're talking about abundance. That's something I had to confess also during the same time. And I've always been one who says, know what it is you want, like get grounded in that thing that you want, and make sure things are in alignment with that. Right? So I'm about that abundance and about what you're seeking is seeking you. However, in two instances, and they were several years apart, I kind of spoke lack to two different individuals. And one of them was a friend, and she was like, look, I need more money. Well, the box that she was in, there was no more money to be had, right? It wasn't going to happen in that box that she was in. So I'm saying, do this, do that, do all these other things, right? And really what it was about is doing those things to stay in that box. In essence, right? Okay, so that was one thing. Another thing is just recently talking to a friend, and a friend of hers wants her to move on the West Coast. So she's up where we are on this side. And they're like, oh, move out to the West Coast. Costs money, expensive. And so I'm like, well, girl, sell your car, do this, da, 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 right? Again, to fit into the box. And I heard myself and I just stopped. Like I didn't say anything to her about it, because she's like, oh no, I'm not selling my car. I'm keeping my car, whatever. And it hit me. And so this past weekend, I had to confess that I was convicted, because it was like I was thinking just what is, as opposed to what can be and should be, and what you should really strive and aspire to, and had to check myself. And then another friend connected me on social media with this woman. I can't think of her name right now, but one of her posts was about, let the world adjust to you. Ma'am, there it is. Let the world adjust to you. Come on.
Yes, that is so true. One of my pastors used to say, I usually pray for a blessing that's I usually don't do this but type of blessing. So knowing that, hey, it doesn't have, your blessings that you get don't have to be confined to the standard or the norm.
Right. Right.
You can get those where it's like, starts off with like, hey, I usually don't do this, but here's the instance that we are going to do it. It's like, hey, I'm not the normal person. I can get, and my God is not regular. I can get extraordinary blessings that don't seem to fit into any boxes you talked about. And so oftentimes those boxes is what constrains us. So I've made a strategic choice in my brand even. So in my brand, it's a box that then has Real Talk Tasha going out of the box with like a brush stroke. And I was intentional about choosing that design because I want to make sure that we are getting ourselves out of the box.
Yeah.
That we aren't confined to it. And we are taking this paintbrush stroke is intentional in the sense that, hey, we are painting our destinies and we get to design what it is, the life that we want. And it doesn't have to be confined to that box.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And also, speaking of your brand, somebody loves green.
Absolutely.
I don't say no names, but somebody loves green, and I love your graphics. Like, you know, you post on Instagram, and I love your graphics. So amazing.
Thank you. I am so intentional about that because green is about wealth. It's about growth. It's about abundance.
Yes.
Like green is new things coming to life, which is a lot of what, like all of that encompasses what I help women bring to fruition.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And we're going to jump into the wealth in just a moment, but real quickly, and you did, I believe you mentioned dream. You definitely mentioned dreams. Not sure if you mentioned deferred dreams, but have you ever had a deferred or delayed dream? And if so, what did you do?
So that's the one where I was mentioning starting my business was a deferred dream. So God planted this vision in my heart over 10 years ago. And I deferred it because I kept thinking I was in the lack mindset of like, oh, I don't have what I need. I'm not ready. And over this like 10 plus years, he kept bringing it up. I can never shake it. It just kept coming back up. And it wasn't until, it got to the point where he truly convicted me with the parable of the talents. And then there was also a point where I was reading this quote that talked about, it said like, what's the wealthiest place in the world? And the answer was the grave. And it's all the dreams that have died, all the books that went unwritten. It was all the books that went unwritten, all the companies that got never started, all the ideas and inventions that never came to life because they died basically with the people who never took action on them. And so those two things, I was like, okay, let me get it together. And it took, God worked with me for some time to over 10 years to get here, but that was my dream deferred. And it's amazing what happens when you actually just take action and start putting, action behind those dreams and those visions, what comes to life and how, the universe and God just orchestrates everything for you. And it's just like, things just start falling in your lap and you're like, oh man, like I never expected this.
Yeah, letting go of that thing that you're holding on, like you said, in showing yourself worthy of that thing that you were given. We're given these things for a reason, not to hold on to them. Because okay, cool. Oh, you holding it to your chest, well, that's where it's gonna stay, right? You're not gonna get this other thing.
Exactly. When you're holding on to something so tight, your hands are so clenched together. God can't even put something new in your hands because you're so holding on to what's comfortable and what you're used to that. How are you ever going to get that thing that he really wants you to have? But then you're sitting back like, oh, well, I'm just waiting on things to change. Like, well, you got to take some action,
right?
But God to be able to bless you. So one of my, because I like I said, I believe external eyes on things are helpful to help you realize some things. So I have my own coach as well. And one of the things that my coach has said is that you need to give God something to bless. So you need to take some action. Like God can't bless something you ain't even started.
Right? Faith without works is dead.
Is dead. Exactly. Exactly.
Wow. Okay, so we're gonna talk about wealth a little bit before you provide your final words. So again, we talked about that. You're helping us get there, get that wealth, get what we should have and what we desire. Why is it important to have wealth? What is it about building wealth and generational wealth?
So many things. So wealth is not just about money. Wealth is money is a huge part of wealth, but wealth is also health. It's freedom financially, freedom emotionally, and being in a good mental state is priceless, because one, you can't really thrive in life unless you are emotionally wealthy and healthy.
Mhm.
But then also from a financial standpoint, like the whole racial equity gap that we have from a wealth standpoint, being able to close that is critical.
Oh yeah.
And like you talked about, generational wealth is so important because that's what helps start to close it. Like, you need to make sure that you are set up in a way that not only that you have financial wealth in the short term, but how do you
Mhm.
set that up for long-term wealth that goes beyond the years that you are living, but
Yeah.
then you can be a blessing to your family and leave that behind ongoing. Because let's just be honest, the world is ruled by money.
Mhm.
Money opens up so many doors and
Brain.
opportunities. Exactly, right? So you
Brain.
need to make sure that you are able to have wealth in a way that it's not just like, oh, I can pay my bills on auto pay, or oh, I'm out of debt.
Right.
But like, how do you create wealth that you are become an owner and not just a borrower?
Right.
How do you, create, like, how do we get more Black um CEOs of
Mhm.
companies and Black leaders who set the example? Like we talked about, purpose unlocks purpose. Being able to visually see somebody who looks like you
Yes.
in spaces that you never thought was possible helps unlock so much potential in others who didn't think it was possible. Just
Right.
like with, President Obama, who once he got in office, it opened up so many kids' eyes. Or like Chadwick Boseman when he was, Black Panther. It's like,
Mhm.
oh my God, like, oh, I see somebody who looks like me doing something I never thought was possible. Now my eyes are opened up outside of the box that I once had. My box has now gotten much
Mhm.
broader and bigger in terms of what the possibilities are that are available to me. And
Yeah.
that is extremely important.
Oh, it absolutely is. And I'll say two people who are that for me. There's many others, but two main people who are that for me: Issa Rae, LeBron James. Come
Yes.
on. Every time you turn around, they are changing the game. And it's just absolutely amazing. And we are seeing, oh, I can do that. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? Oh, wow, I can do that. It's about knowing what you want and putting in the work to have it and connecting with people, right? And it's open your hands, right? It's
Exactly.
open in your hands. Like God put something in you. He put, hey, you got the gift for God. What you doing with it?
Right.
You
And
know
it's
what I'm
like,
saying?
open your hands in a way that you aren't afraid to move on from what you have today. Because there are so many people who have got, and this is also part of the mentality that I think stifles a lot of women of color, is because we don't have the generational wealth, a lot of us come from backgrounds where we didn't really have much. I
Right.
personally grew up in what is considered poverty. Although I had everything that I, needed, the fundamentals, like I didn't realize until I got older. It's like, oh, okay, we were actually living in poverty level.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I got to a space, where I'm at big companies making six figures, I'm like, mama, I made it. Like,
Right.
from my lens, I'm like, oh my God, like, oh, I feel like I'm rich. Like I can, do everything. I'm like debt free, etc., not having to worry about bills and living paycheck to paycheck. But that mindset kind of can put you in a smaller box when you
Mm-hmm.
haven't had much. To get a little bit seems like a lot,
Right.
which I am
Exactly.
100% grateful for everything that I
Right.
have. But I don't want that. I can be grateful without being content.
Mm-hmm.
So I can still strive for more, and I can appreciate the things that I have without becoming stagnant, because I don't want to limit myself to being a millionaire. Like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, maybe making six figures, but there's more out there that is capable, and
Absolutely.
there's more generational wealth that I could be creating. But oftentimes when we get to a space where we've never seen anybody around us have the level of wealth that we have, we get so prone to wanting to grasp and hold on to it and not let it go. It's like, oh, well, I don't want to lose this
Yeah.
position that I've gotten in life, or these things that I've gotten. So I'm holding on it so tight that I'm
Mm-hmm.
not willing to open my hands and believe that there's possibility for me to have even greater than what I have now.
Yeah.
And so being able to release that and say, hey, I am grateful for what I have, but I also know I'm capable of attaining more, and I'm open for the blessings that God has for me, and I'm willing to let go of my current situation if need be to be able to elevate to that next
Yes.
level.
Yes. I love that. I absolutely love that. So what you said earlier about representation, it definitely matters. And then exposure as well, exposing our children and ourselves to things beyond what we're used to. And I'll give you an example with my son. We were in Santa Barbara in May. And so we were staying in Inglewood because now when I'm traveling, I want to be in, and I say the hood, but it's the neighborhood. So I want to be in the Black neighborhoods, right? And so we're staying in Inglewood, Venice Beach, riding around Santa Monica. We go to Santa Barbara. And so I'm asking, like, which of these areas would you want to stay in? So, for me, I was like, I was saying Venice Beach. Like, I love, Venice Beach, the artsy part of it. And so when we got to Santa Barbara, he said, this is where I want to live. So my question was, what are you going to do to be able to live here? And he kind of wrote out his plan. Yes, I planted those seeds. I planted seeds, put them in situations, put them in traditional and non-traditional settings for, planning all of that for him to now say to me, this is where I want to live. And I'm going to tap into that thing that you had me doing to make it happen.
Yep.
And we
exposure is so important.
It. Yes, all of that.
Exposure and opportunity. Yes.
All of that. So before we wrap, what would you like to leave our guests with, our audience?
Yes. So I would like to let the audience know that you deserve to be heard, valued, and respected for the talents and gifts that you bring to the table. And that if you have something that you are sitting on that your heart desires, that you should go after it. One of the affirmations that I often say is, I deserve my desires. Abundance is my birthright. Know that, use it, borrow it, whatever. Know that I am here for you. If you are, whether you know what you want and are struggling to figure out how to go get it, whether you kind of have an inkling but aren't really sure, whether you like what you're doing but you have a side hustle that you want to get started up and you just need some help kind of figuring out some of the strategic moves that you should be making, I am here for you for all your career needs. And if there are any people working at companies who need some DEI consulting and figuring out how to make sure that they have inclusive leaders that create safe and thriving spaces for women and people of color, please reach out. You can follow me on IG at Real Talk Tasha. You can also follow me on Facebook at Miss, spelled MS, Real Talk Tasha. You can go to my website, realtalktasha.com. Social media is the best place to reach me. You can also find me on LinkedIn at Tasha Randle, spelled Randle.
Thank you so much. And all of this will definitely be in the notes. So make sure that you are listening on your favorite podcast platform and or watching on YouTube. Greatly appreciate you all out there for your loyalty. And this has been a Real Talk with Tasha. I have so enjoyed this conversation. And seriously, I was over here at one point, like eyes were watery, right? Because this just tapped into the whole weekend experience that I had out in LA.
Yes. Tell your friend, like, hey, God just sent an on-time word through somebody that didn't even know it was needed.
Right.
But I'm glad I could be of service.
Yes, I appreciate you. And thank you so much. Enjoy
the rest of your day. Thank you so much. You too.
All right.